Hello, world and city of Athens, because I'm doing this for y'all. I'm going to set the table for us. It's a Sunday evening. I'm feeling full. I've already had my lunch. It's kind of a muggy day. It's raining outside. And I'm here with someone who could break history. They could be the first Black mayor of the city of Athens, Dexter Fisher. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Cass. I'm doing great, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you and talk with the residents of Athens-Clarke County. So thank you very much for having me on your podcast today.
Absolutely. Honestly, it's an honor, and I'm glad that we can have this discussion. This already says a lot about who you are, just being able to have this conversation with me today. So I wanted to feel like this is a conversation. We just going out and talking politics. Where would you take me if we were in person? Where in the city would you take me for us to have this conversation?
Wow. I visit a lot of mom and pops restaurants. Of course, I ate today at the oh shoot, it just left me. Um, Harold's place up there on Broad Street.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, it's one of my favorite places to go and eat. My son after Sunday church. We'll come to me in a few minutes, but great place to go and eat. I used to frequent Weaver D's a lot before he closed, so I
Hmm.
always try to make sure that I invest in small African American, especially restaurants and businesses. So I always try to make sure I put my dollars into those establishments. So to me, that would be some place that we can chop it up, talk shop, and whatever, and get some good eating. So for sure.
I love that. So take me back. Like I've known you for a couple of years, but take me back to where it all began. What kind of kid were you in high school?
Wow, great question. So eventually, my grandmother, if I was a kid today, they probably would have had me on medication. I'm serious. I couldn't sit still. And so my grandmama told my mom, "You need to put that boy in some sports to keep his energy going." So for me, I started playing sports, and as a little boy growing up, I played football, baseball, basketball, and football was my sport. That was me. That's how I paid for my education. But and I talked about this on the campaign. I'm a civil rights baby. Grew up in a household, did not have a father, just me and my brother, and I had to watch my mom struggle to raise two boys by herself. And my daddy was livid, but he just decided not to be a part of our lives, which was fine. But I watched her struggle to make sure that we had food on the table. And the good thing about when I grew up in the city in the 60s, though, there was a village. I had people in that community that supported me, that helped me, that mentored me, and I'm from Greenwood, South Carolina, so I'm never gonna forget those roots. I truly believe it made me the man that I am today. To set me on the path that I'm on right now. Um, After I graduated from high school, went to college on a football scholarship, Mars Hill University. Played 4 years of football there. And my dream, and actually what I was going to do, what I thought I was going to do is go back to my hometown and coach and work with the young people in that community. But as life would have it, um, I started working in private industry. We're actually in the textile industry. And because it was paying good money at that particular time. But textiles started going in the 80s, early 80s, textiles started going overseas. So I figured out, I said, you know what, I need to start applying for graduate schools. I started applying for graduate school all around the Southeast, University of South Carolina, University of North Carolina, of course, Georgia. And lo and behold, bam, here I am, Athens, 1988. I moved to this community. And I'm sorry. Yeah, 1988 when I moved. Yeah, I moved to this community and started graduate school. And my plan was to get my master's degree and move back to Greenwood. Because I always knew, Cassie, I was going to get into politics in some form or
Okay.
fashion. I just watched my mom go around and knock on doors to get people registered. Because as soon as the Voting Rights Act passed, and it gave us black folks the opportunity to register to vote, my mom started knocking on doors. And I was going with her to do that. I'm listening to these conversations. She's telling our neighbors, hey, y'all need to register to vote. So that sort of set my path on my journey to get into politics. But again, if life would have it, I moved to Athens, um, got in grad school, and UGA hired me while I was in graduate school. I started out in the HR. I started at the HR department. Started working with hiring people and getting folks employed. And at UGA. And then 5 years later, I moved to facilities, which is sort of crazy. So, I did have a private industry background, and I have always supervised people. But somebody always used to ask me, well, how did you get into facilities? I sort of fell into that job. I truly did. Um, the guy that was the associate vice president that time, he was a retired colonel, military colonel, honor colonel, army colonel. And he said, hey, I need somebody here that can help me change the culture of this department. And if you know anything about facilities, and I said this on a podcast the other day, it was a good old boy system. Nothing but white guys.
Mm.
So here I am, and I appreciate him giving me that opportunity to change that culture. And what I said to him, I said, I tell you what, if you get out of my way, let me do what I do, we'll change the culture. He said, you do what you do. So we had to start making some changes in that department. I moved up through that organization, ended up being named director. They never had an African-American director of facilities on that campus. And when I used to go to my conferences, I was one of the few that looked like me that was there. What I understood, though, in order for me to change that culture, I had to make sure I had to have people up there that looked like me, not only men, but also women. And one thing that I'm proud of, Cassie, we hired more women and more men in leadership positions. And what I did, we started some programs. We started a GED program. Then we started a program with Athens-Tech where our staff can go there and get the training that they need, and we paid for it. And I used to always tell my staff, only thing gonna cost you is your time. Cause we're gonna only thing we ask is to see your grades, but books and tuition, that fell on our department and we paid for it. And we had a lot of people to go back. Not only people in those particular skill types, but also in the administrative type. Had a young lady who was a custodian and she had some skills. I said, I tell you what, go back to school, let's refine your skills. She ended up getting her associate degree, moving up the ladder. Now she's, matter of fact, she just retired after 30 years. But,
Wow.
things like that makes me proud that I had the opportunity to help people to move up within the organization that I was over. So, and I wear that as a badge of honor. And I really appreciate the opportunity. And a lot of those people, let me say, they were born and raised here in Athens. People would tell you that a lot of people that work for us were born and raised here. My assistant director, my first assistant director was a black female, born and raised in Athens. I had to push her out the door to take another job, a higher paying job. She left. The person I replaced her with was a young black man, born and raised in Athens. So those are the type of things that people don't know about me because I don't brag about it, but that's those type of things that I do and that I did.
So what I'm hearing is you've always been a culture guy. You've been around civil rights and that type of thing for a while. What was your first political action? Was it working with your mom or was it some of the things that you did on the job? When did you realize that politics was going to be your thing? I know you felt it from a young age.
Yeah, probably I first got a taste of it with my mom, but when I really got a taste of it when I moved here to Athens, when they were talking about doing unification. I started going to those meetings as a grad student because I was curious, what does unification means? And what is that about for this Athens community? As you know, we have a city of Athens and a county of Athens. And what unification was talking about was we're going to unify both the city and the county to have one government. So I was curious. Now, if you do a backstory and do a history on that, they had tried to pass unification for 4 years. And it always failed because the African-American community did not support it. Well, for the fifth time, when they decided to put it for a vote, they made some promises to our community. One of the promises was we're going to do sewer and water countywide, and we're going to do economic development over in the East Athens area. Well, as you know, here we are, 30 plus years later, those things have not happened. So I'm sitting there having these conversations and watching the wheeling and dealing and watching people, again, and let me preface this, I was not in those negotiations and those things, but I was there listening what was being said to the community. And those things did not happen. So, we get a unified government and now here we are, 30 plus years later, I'm running as mayor to change some of those things that should have happened. Now, it's not going to happen overnight because we're going to have to play catch up, but we got to put some improvements in our sewer and our infrastructure, and we got to make sure that the east side gets some economic development. And I'm proud to say, because of the TAD tax allocation district, right now, a little bit over millions of dollars will be flowing into East Athens. And one of the things I say and I'm gonna claim this, when I become mayor, one of the things that we're gonna do is sit down with that community, sit down with the commissioner that represent that district, and we're gonna talk to those residents. We're gonna ask them, tell us what you want to do with the millions of dollars that you're gonna have and how we want to use it to better the community. We as a government, I'm not gonna let us as a government make those decisions. That community will make that decision for how they want to use those tax dollars in order to improve that community. So it's going to be citizen driven with the support of the local government.
So that's great because it kind of leads into what I want to ask next because you have relationships with major institutions, developers, corporations, and UGA. But at the same time, everyday working class Athenians like me, we feel like some of those forces have contributed to rising costs and displacement and pressure on lower wage residents.
Mhm.
How do you balance those relationships with the needs of everyday working people?
I think one of the things that has also been left out is those individuals have not had a seat at the table. And I seriously say, that's why I said my first 100 days, Cassie, we're going to be out in the streets and we're going to the neighborhoods. We'll go to Nellie. We'll go to Rock Spring. We'll go to Parkview. We'll go to Broad Acres. I want to go where those residents are and talk to them. How can we do better? Not only as a local government, but then how do we bring these other partners, to your point, how do we bring these other partners to the table? And for me, and I always tell people, people say, well, he spent 30 plus years at UGA and he's going to be a puppet. When I go have those meetings with those individuals, I'm going as the mayor of Athens because you all voted for me to be there. I'm not going as a former employee. I'm going as mayor. And I can talk the talk and walk the walk and talk the language because to me it's important. This is what people don't realize. This is my community too. I mean, I've been here 38 years. My children were born here. So it behooves me to make sure that we get everything that we can to better our community. But we got to have those voices that you mentioned. I got to hear from those voices because again, I don't want to make any assumptions. I don't want to say, well, I'm going to make these. I need to hear those voices from our residents in those particular areas and people who feel left out of our government. And I've said this, if you go back and look at any of our commission's meetings, and I've called out my own my own colleagues and the mayor. First of all, you all don't trust us. And what's interesting about that, African American community don't trust us, nor the white community. We have not built up any trust with our residents. We have not shown any type of accountability or transparency. Well, I'm not having that. I'm going to make sure that what I know, the residents know, and my colleagues know, because I can tell you deals have been cut where we as commissioners was not a part of those deals. That's not the type of guy that I am and never have been. And I'm going to bring people to the table because I want to hear those voices. And if I'm missing those things and some of those things were talked about on the campaign, I want to hear those voices. And I want those voices to really, really be a part of what we do to transform this community. Because I can tell you what we got to do is change the culture of our government and how we do business. We can't do business as usual. And I'm not going to do business as usual. That's why I told these people that's running, who never sit behind that rail, you better get ready to go to work. Because if you don't show up, I'm going to call you out. You got to show up for the people that put you there. Too many times, Cassie, politicians think they know what's best for the community, where we need to be hearing those voices. And I don't make a lot of promises, but I would promise you this. I will listen to those voices and I will hear those voices.
So you brought up you are a commissioner right now, and I'm a
Yes.
person. I watch the mayor and commissioner meetings, and we do have a lot of people in the community that comes to those meetings that gives their public input. Do you have any ideas or already received feedback on what you're considering when you're asking for things on behalf of Athens residents?
And, well, I think the number one thing we always talk about, and that's statewide and countrywide, is housing. How do we bring more housing into this community? Now, I can tell you now, my opponent's been talking about density, but you need to really read between the lines. When you talk about density, where's that density going to go? I'll tell you where it's going to go. He's going to try to do it in East Athens. You ain't going to do no density in 5 Points. You ain't going to do no density in Boulevard. So what I'm looking at is, first of all, we got to change our zoning laws, Cassie. They haven't been changed in 25 years. For example, we can't build a house, a single family house, under 1,000 square foot. We can't do manufacturing homes. We can't do tiny homes. We got to change those zoning laws in order for us to do that. We just did the future land use, and I pushed back a little bit on that because there was nothing said about zoning. I said, y'all trying to do this future land use and where all this building is going to be, but what about the zoning? And then what about the infrastructure? How are we going to support housing if we don't have an infrastructure in place? One of the things I want to do when these developers come in and start talking about building, okay, well, you're going to help us put that infrastructure with sewer and water in place if you're going to do business in Athens. So for me, I think that's what we need to do. Those are some of the things when we start looking at our zoning laws, when we can build houses that's 1,000 square foot or less, when we look at manufacturing homes or even tiny homes. For our veterans, we got a large veteran population. I would love to do a tiny home development for our veterans, things like that. Matter of fact, I don't want to spill the beans too much on here. But I've been talking with a veterans group. They got some property. I want to know how we can do a public and private partnership with them to get that particular property developed for veterans. So I think there's some behind the scenes things that I've been doing as mayor. I can push the other agenda, and nobody's going to push back and say you're not going to be a housing for veterans. So those are the type of things that I'm looking at in my administration, where we can really move this community forward. Now, one of the things that we're missing is what I call a missing middle. For example, like you, young professional, um, make pretty good money, but you're priced out of the housing market. So we
Right.
got to figure out how do we get somebody like yourself, even like my son Carlos, how do we get you all into single family home? Because that's how you build generational wealth. Well, another thing that I want to look at, we own property, the government. We can use some of those land and do tax credits in order to help hold the bill. We want the developer, they want to make money. I get it. But at the same time, what can you build if we give you a tax credit for somebody, these young professionals, school teachers, nurses, people that work in plants, people who work in the nonprofit world? How can we get them into affordable housing? And I think I want to look at property that we own, and we do own a lot of property. How can we use that in order to build on to get our missing middle young professionals in those type of housing? So those are some of the things that on my mind that I think that we need to do, and that's what I want to push.
You brought up infrastructure, and from what I understand, the Pinewood area is dealing with an infrastructure issue as far as their water. What can
Mhm.
you say about the Pinewood area and what the commission has already done and what you plan on doing about strengthening their infrastructure in that area specifically?
One conversation I've talked with Commissioner Thornton, which is as part of her district, is really take a look at again how can we do a public-private partnership? 'Cause what we have to be careful about because that particular I'm calling it housing development is owned by a private entity. So we as a government can't go in and just, give them fresh water. But what we could do is do a maybe public-private partnership with them. Say, okay, there's something that for example, if y'all do the hookup, say if they bring the water, y'all do the hookup, maybe we can cut on our end the hookup fees. The thing for the people that have to do that. So those are some of the things that we're gonna have to balance. And I want people to understand that because when there's a private entity that's owned that, the government really can't um, do the water in the sewer there, but we can do some type of discounted stuff on our part to help those residents make sure they have clean drinking water. And in this, we're in 2026, and people don't have clean drinking water. That's sad and that's embarrassing really for our community. But again, it is owned by a private entity, and that company is really trying to work hard to do that. So we'll see. And we've been in conversation with them, so we'll see where that goes. I'm gonna do my best to keep my eye on it first, and work with the commissioner from that district to make sure those folks have clean drinking.
Okay, and you've also talked about something that's exciting for a lot of people is airport expansion.
Mhm,
But that also brings displacement concerns because when we're talking about expansion, naturally, we're like, where is this going to go?
mhm.
And we've already talked about the housing crisis here and affordability. How do you expand the airport without displacing people or putting more pressure on nearby communities?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to expand the airport.
Okay.
I'm not gonna expand. What I'm trying to do is get in an airline service here. We have not had airline service in Athens since 2014. What I'm trying to do is bring in airline services. We have 1,600 people a day that's going to Atlanta or Greenville from Athens a day, not a month, a day that are leaving, going to Atlanta or Greenville to catch a flight. That doesn't make sense to me. Um, Perfect example, Delta flies out all our sports teams from UGA. And Delta really should really have a small hub here. We can do 2 to 3 flights a day, maybe 4 flights a day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. And because of our population has expanded, we're 135, 140,000 people here in Clarke County. And think about all the surrounding areas that don't want to drive to Atlanta. It takes, 2 hours to get there. You got to find parking. We can really build on that, but not to expand, because I know what's there. So you can't be honest with, we can expand, but
Right.
we can fly in a 737. On my watch, I would never expand that runway, but I will look at trying to get an airline service here to help the residents that fly out a lot. And I think that spurs sometimes economic development when you think about stuff like that. We got a company, Miser, they out of California. Well, right now they have to fly in Atlanta to drive in. That particular is a biotech company. They're going to produce 1,700 jobs for this community. And I said this yesterday on a podcast. We need to make sure that not only our young people, but the people that live here have those opportunities to get those jobs.
Right.
$55,000 a year. They're going to be working with Athens-Tech and UGA and to train those individuals to go into those jobs. So we got to be intentional. We got to make sure that when those jobs start to open up and Athens-Tech start that training, that we need to be standing in line. We need to really push our residents that, hey, these are good paying jobs. You have opportunity to move up. And some of these jobs are going to be working in labs, as a tech person. But as you get experience, as you move up, those are good opportunities. That company really want to invest in this community, but I also want them to invest in the people that live here. And that's and any company that comes here that we recruit in the future. That's one thing I'm gonna demand. You got to hire people in this community, but and that works both ways. But we also got to get them trained. Because as you know, industry is changing. IA is a big deal now. And we got to make sure that our young people are up on those things, understand how things work. And I tell people this. When I go talk to young people, I always ask them, a lot of time I have my commissioner hat on, I always ask them, do you know who the mayor of Athens is? Some of them don't. Well, they're going to know that Dexter Fisher is the mayor of Athens. Because like I said, I'm going to be in these streets. I'm engaged, not on our school system. We got to engage our faith-based community. We got to engage our nonprofits. We got to engage our business community. And what businesses do, what I've understand my 38 years here, they will invest money if they start seeing impact and results. So that's one of the things that I think I can bring to the table and start having those tough conversations with them. I think I got a little bit of credibility with folks in this community. And I think that's one of my superpowers. I can get people at the table. Thing I got to figure out, okay, once we get y'all at the table, how are we going to make this work? How are we going to make this work for the people that live here and for you all to invest in? One of the things that came up on the campaign trail was UGA kicking in dollars because they don't pay taxes. Well, see, the way you go about doing that is, and I've already had these conversations, you don't so much go up top, you go to the departments. For example, I got a great relationship with the dean. And for the record, my undergrad degree is in social work.
Okay.
People don't know that. But I have a great relationship with the dean of School of Social Work. He wants to do stuff in our community. But because there's not a good talent gown relationship right now, he wants to. And they're talking about bringing dollars to those relationships. Same with the athletic department. I can pick up the phone right now and call Josh Brooks and say, hey, I need some help with some stuff. And they'll be willing to kick in. I'll give you a perfect example. During the pandemic, he called me, and I was working for the school district there. He said, hey, what do you all need? I said, we need to make sure that every young person in this community got access to internet. He got some of the student athletes involved. He got involved. They raised over $200,000. We bought devices for every young people during the pandemic where they have access to a computer, to the internet. That don't happen if you ain't got relationships. So to
Right.
me, those type of things that I bring to the table, I can get things done, but I really want to bridge this gap with our community. Because one of the things, if you watch the last forum that we did, it might have been at the Morton. If it was at the library, they asked me what are some of what do you see some of the issues with Athens? And what I said was there's a race issue and there's a wealth issue. We got to make sure that we have these tough conversations about race relationships in this community and
Right.
what it means to our African American community, and then what it means to the white community, and how we bridge that gap. You know, those are tough conversations. But I'm willing to have those conversations. And same thing about the wealth gap. You know, we got the haves and the have-nots. How do we start bringing up people that don't have those means? How do we help them get into housing? How do we help them find employment? How do we make sure that our children don't get involved in gangs? Another things I want to do is do a what I call a youth summit and talk with our young people. Tell us as adults what do we need to do to help you guys. So again, because too many times you know this, as adults we tell the young people what we think they need. I need to hear those voices also. So for me, that's why I'm gonna be aggressive in my first one day. It's gonna be tiring, but the work's got to get done, and we got to change the culture. And I think that brings trust back when they see the elected officials out in the neighborhood, or they're gonna see me out in the neighborhood. That brings back trust. It brings back accountability, and it brings back the transparency of what we're doing in this community.
I love that. So I want to stay on the topic of race since we're here now. I want to talk about the racial and economic justice resolution. And for those listening, it was a resolution of the Commission of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, to acknowledge the continuous gaps in equitable resource distribution to BIPOC communities and reaffirm commitment to promote housing security, economic empowerment, and youth safety for marginalized communities. From what I understand is that you originally voted no in passing the resolution. So can we talk about that original vote?
Yeah, because what I said to them is we need to make that an ordinance. Resolution don't mean the paper is written on. I'm just gonna be blunt with you. In order to get things done, what I found out the 4 years that I've been on this commission is if you got an ordinance in place, then there's some teeth behind that. That means we gotta do it. With a resolution, I mean, I took some heat for that, and that's okay. But with a resolution, what happened? Okay, yeah, we did a resolution. Everybody's feeling good. Then it get put on the shelf. Or ordinance have teeth to it. That means we got to do it. So that's why I voted against, because I thought it should have been more of an ordinance. And we need to change that. When people come to us with resolutions and stuff, that's all fine and good. It makes sense. But at the end of the day, how you get things done are through ordinances. And that's how you get things, because it's on the books. We voted. Okay, this is what we said we were gonna do. One thing that we did do, we did that disparity study, and I wasn't surprised. Actually, I didn't think we need to do a study, because we knew that the government was not doing business with women and African American businesses. I mean, we knew that. So I mean, less than 1%. We got to do it. In the school district, I got to tip my hat to the school district. They do a really good job of trying to engage those communities for when it comes to jobs that they have and what they're putting out on the street. We need to do the same thing. We need to be having training with those small businesses and tell them how they do business with us and how they can partner maybe with a larger company to get some of those subs in there. And we have not done that in the past. So those are some of the things that we can get these, put some teeth into those businesses, into those small business owners, and help them build their company and their organization. So those are some of the things, and that's why, again, that's why I voted no on the front end, because it just I try to look at things from a realistic standpoint, Cassie, and see where they work. And for me, it was gonna sit on. Think about all the revolutions that have came down the pipe, even before my time, and then you ask yourself, what have they done with them?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that perspective. My response to it would be, well, that's the first step is
Mhm.
the acknowledgement.
Right.
So since the resolution has essentially come to pass, you eventually voted for it and it passed. What has been done by the commission from this point to make good? I mean, it wasn't even just you. I want to clarify. It wasn't just you who voted no against it, and you weren't the only one who raised similar concerns. So now that it's passed, have there been any steps by the commission to kind of meet the moment of the resolution?
We've having conversations. One of the things that we were talking about, is rent control, and that's gonna be a tough battle because that's on the state level. We're gonna have to really engage our state legislators and people that represent this particular community, and that's gonna probably have to be not only our local delegation, other delegations from around the state to get rent control. Even in the state of Georgia. I lived in New York for a year, and of course they got rent control up there. And stuff. So those are the type of things that we have started those conversations. Same thing with housing. I think, Cassie, sometimes people forget though, and I constantly reminding people, we're the smallest geographical area in the state of Georgia out of 159 counties. So when I think about trying to build or put more affordable housing in place, I'm trying to strategically figure out where we can put that at. That's why I mentioned about the earlier about the us owning land from the government. And I'll give you a perfect example though. We got to bring in developers though that's willing to do that. Right now in my district, we just passed 139-bed senior housing for 55 years and older. A one-bedroom will cost $600. Two-bedroom will cost $800. That project will start because the developer thought, hey, we want to do affordable housing for people in this community. I want to engage other developers who has that same type of insight for our community. And again, it's about having conversations with people. Okay, we did the senior housing. Can we do housing for that missing middle? And and sometimes these developers own property already. I think it's just to have a conversation. Say, hey, you own this property, you own this tract of land. Let's look at doing that missing middle. Let's look at a community that's going to employ teachers, nurses, people that work in plants. I think you still can get more bang for your buck if you build 100 single family homes. Those people would jump on those. And again, and I understand about inflation, I understand about the cost, but we can build something for 250,000, 275,000. Young people like yourself may have a chance to get into housing. So those are some of the conversations that we're having um, with that organization. And again, Rome wasn't built in a year. As your next mayor, I will continue those conversations with them. And I got to engage my colleagues, and they got to understand for what we need to do and what my agenda is going to be, because it's going to be aggressive. Because I've said this, if I don't move the needle somewhat, I won't run for reelection. And I mean that. So that's why, for me, I'm committed. I understand the assignment. I'm hearing the voices when I go around this community and talk with people. And I've been everywhere. One of the things I get criticized, say, well, you don't go on the east side. I was on the east side for some people were born. I'm just saying, when I moved here, and I always knew this, when you go into a new community, you always go to the barbershop and find
Yeah.
out stuff. So I went Sheets, and I still go. I don't have no hair, but they do my beard. But I still go to Sheets Beauty and Barber to get my hair and stuff done and get my beard done. So they was telling me, I told them, I said, at times a grad student. Hey, tell me, where the best place to get soul food and things like that. So, they was spilling me, and they was telling me, I said, well, tell me a little bit about Athens. Tell me about the block. Tell me about other parts. And I said, okay, I'm gonna go visit. So I've always gone over to the east side. So that's, and Commissioner Taylor will tell you when we first, because me and her got elected the same time 4 years ago. When she first got elected, she said, hey, would you come to some of the meetings with me and listen to our residents? She asked me, I don't know why she asked me, but she asked me. I went and I started hearing those voices 4 years ago. So the misnomer that I don't engage people over on the east side, not true. I always have. And let me say this. Whatever happens in this mayor's campaign, I'm still going to be in the community because I do stuff where people don't even know about, and I don't even talk about it. So I'm going to still be, I'm going to say, a force in this community, and I'm going to be out there trying to help not only our young people, but help our community thrive, because that's what you do, and that's what I know. That's what I was brought up on, and I will always do that. So I'm going to continue to help. A lot of times with elected officials, if they don't win the race, you don't see them anymore. You're going to see me regardless.
I
You're
like
going to see
that.
me. Yeah.
You gonna see me. So
Yeah.
I want to take it back to somewhat of the process because I know everybody listening doesn't always know. So when a developer comes to Clarke County, do they have to sit down with the commissioners first? Because I believe I recently read that one of the developers maybe have declined the incentive for to create affordable housing or something
Mhm.
like that. So can you tell us about that process?
So, and I'm just going to talk about the 5th district. And I made that clear when I first got elected. Any developer that want to do business in the 5th district, they need to pick up the phone and call me first. Because I want to know, first of all, what are you doing or what are you trying to, and whether or not it fits the 5th district. And then the second thing that I do is, depending on where they want to build at, I'm going to engage that particular community where it's happening. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. Um, Homewood Hill Shopping Center in my district. That shopping center is going to despair. It really is. A developer came in and wanted to develop that property. He was gonna keep the family-owned restaurants there. He was gonna put housing there. Um, he was gonna do a lot of good things. We had 8 meetings, Cassie, with that community, and every time we went to the meeting, they wanted to change something, which was fine, and that's what they do. And the developer changed every time. They wanted more green space. Put in more green space, and more walkability. We did that. But at the end of the day, that community said we didn't want it. So I had to pick up the phone and call the developer. You need to pull the project. I said, because I follow the people that voted for me. They don't want the project. Now, what we got to be careful, and this is another thing that's on the books when I think about ordinance. There are some developments where they say you can build by right. And what that means is they don't have to go before the planning commission, whatever that particular project is zoned for, as long as it's zoned for that, they can go in there and build. And sometimes what happens, a developer will go in there and build something, and it doesn't fit what that community looks like. So that's one of my biggest fears that can happen, and we're gonna have to change that in our ordinance to get away from this build by right. So yeah. So though for me, and that's how I operate. Now, you're right. Now, some developers will come in and start a project. They don't reach out to the commissioner, don't reach out to the community. The community find out, they up in arms. So
Mm.
my MO is always, if you're gonna do anything in District 5, first phone call you need to make it to me. And they knew that. I mean, I made that perfectly clear.
Okay, and before we move on, I want to go back to the relationship with UGA because when I think about the relationship, I also think about how there are professors and students who are studying fields that we're trying to get more information on. Have you thought about different, maybe non-conventional steps towards better relationships with UGA? And I know it's something interesting I want to add too that we always talk about the relationship with UGA, but it was interesting that you brought up also the relationship with Athens Tech. So can you talk about some of the ideas maybe that are unconventional about the relationship between you and UGA and what ideas you have for Athens Tech in the city of Athens?
So one of the things from day one, and again, and unfortunately, and it is no secret, right now the relationship between the city and UGA is not good at all. Now, I want to preface that our staff work extremely well together. They really do. Um, our new county manager, he works with the government relations area. Chief of police, work with the chief of police there. So our departments, both departments work good together. The problem is up top. Um, for me, from day one, we got a seat at the table because of my relationship, because of the 30 plus years I worked there. What people don't know, when I worked at UGA, I worked for 3 different presidents, Chuck Knapp, Michael Allen, and Jerry Moorhead. And what was interesting about that, all 3 of those presidents had me on different committees. And that's sort of how I started building relationships. Um, when our vice president for business and finance, which I worked under twice, when those openings were open, I was on those committees to select somebody. So for me, those type of things from day one would be we have a seat at the table. And again, I'm going as the mayor of Athens, not as a former employee. I'm not going to do that. I know the assignment. I know what people are looking at and what their expectation is. So from day one, we're gonna start having those, and some of those conversations may be tough conversations. I want, and you're right, students come here, and when I go talk to student groups over there, first thing I always tell them, find a nonprofit or organization to volunteer so you understand what's going on in this community. Because I can tell you, with that campus, sometimes with our students, they have no idea what goes on outside that campus. I always tell them, especially African American students that I come across, or someone that's in fraternity and sorority, you all need to get out from behind the UGA, come out of this campus, and really get to know this community. 'Cause when I went to school, I got to know the community, that I was going to be there for that next 4 years. And to me, that's important that those young people do it. And same thing, we got faculty members um, that are willing to work with us. I think what's important though, and I get it, sometimes when people are doing their research, especially in our community, there's a skepticism of that. And I don't blame because, okay, you're doing research on me. What does it mean though for my community? Is it going to help my
Mhm.
community, or are you going to use it to write a book? So we
Yeah.
need to make sure when they're coming into our community to do stuff, we want you to help us help impact that community to make that community better. Not for your dissertation, not for this, but we want to make sure that you're helping. And that'd be something that I would demand. If you're going to do that, if you're going to call me and say, hey, I want to do something with this community, first thing I'm going to ask, okay, tell me what you want to do and what's the end game. Is the end game for your dissertation? No thanks. We're not going to do that. With Athens Tech, I spoke at their commencement last year. And I have a good relationship with Dr. Daniel. Same thing. From day one, there's a seat at the table. I think Athens Tech is a jewel. I really, a 4-year degree is great, but so many times our young people can go over there, not spend a whole lot of money, not getting a whole lot of that, can get a certificate and go to work making $20, $25 an hour start now. But again, we don't talk about that enough. That's why I got to engage my K through 12. I work with Dr. Scott now, and she's the new superintendent. Make sure that those young people understand that, hey, you can go out to Athens Tech and get a certificate within 18 months, not spend a whole lot of money, and make a lot of money. I tell you, I had to call a plumber over here yesterday. And the only thing I have my handle on my commode broke.
Mm.
He charged me $55. He was in less than 30 minutes. So I'm just saying though, and let me preface this so I want your community to know, everybody that comes in my house look like me. My plumber, my electrician, my HVAC guy, my yard guy. Matter of fact, we just got our kitchen done. I use a black contractor. So again, I try to invest my money in the folks that look like us. So that's just what I do. But I think we need to really help our young people understand that a technical degree can take you a long way. You can go out there and get a nursing degree in 2 years.
Mhm.
So, what we got, not only do we have to engage but we got to engage those parents. We got to help those parents. That's why when I do this youth summit, we're gonna have a section for those parents because they need to understand the potential. And I'm never, I said this on the campaign, I ain't gonna never kick our school district because there's so much potential there for our young people to do well. I want to support them. I want to engage them, but we got to do a whole community thing. We got to do a village thing to help our young people make sure they succeed in whatever endeavor they want to do. So that's what we got to do. And I think a government can play a role in there. I think we have to be in a partnership with them.
Something that you said that stood out to me is engaging. How do we inform the community about things that are happening in government? Because just me looking at the ACC website is not user friendly, and I consider myself a tech person. I work in tech. What other ways have you thought about communicating with the constituents of Athens?
So one time, I'm talking about doing a podcast. Start doing a live podcast for
Okay.
our community. And also, and you're right. I think we need to go take a look at our website and make it more user friendly. And like I'm pretty good at doing technology stuff. So, but it can be convoluted and trying to get to different departments. So I think we need to take a real strong look at our website, make it user friendly. I'm thinking about doing a podcast. I'm doing a day with Dexter, bringing people in that may not never go in the city hall. bringing those young people in. So I got ideas how I want to do that. And one of the things, and I keep saying, man, I'm gonna be a busy guy because if you're gonna change the culture, it got to start at top. I got to set the stage to make sure we do that and set the parameters. And I got to make sure because I can't do it, but I got to make sure my 10 other commissioners is on this ride with me. I got to get them, and not that they not, but they're gonna see a different type of mayor. And that's why I tell some of the folks, we had 4 people that's running my district. I met with all 4 of them. I just told them, I said, y'all better get ready to go to work. Ed Tyler just just won District 7. I said, Ed, you better get ready to go to work. Because what people don't realize, Cassie, and I'm fortunate because I'm retired. But for me, because I want to make sure I took care of District 5, it's a 60-hour-a-week job. I mean, when you look at, we have 3 meetings a month. The mayor appoints people to committees. Also, you responding to your constituents. You either can do a good job or you can do a bad job. And my deal was, I always told my constituents, if you call, text, or email me, I'll call you back within 48 hours, unless I'm on vacation or I'm out of the country or something. But I'm always going to respond. I need my colleagues to do something. In fact, I just got an email this morning because the guy said, well, you're running for mayor. I'm going to have some issues, and my commissioner have not responded. Now, I'm going to pick up the phone and call that commissioner and say, hey, I got this email. Not sure you're aware of this. I said, I don't mind responding, but this is one of your constituents. I need for you to, at least open that door. And I said, if you want me to go with you, and I've done that. I've talked to my colleagues. I'm Mayor Pro Tem. I say, hey, y'all want me to go with y'all? With me, I'll be glad to go. It's your district. Because again, I think what people don't understand, Cassie, the commissioners really do have the power.
Mm.
The mayor sets the agenda. That's number one. And we hire the county manager, the county attorney, our auditor, and our clerk of commission. That's part of our role, but the commissioners really do have the power. My power would be controlling the agenda, but I'm going to make sure that my colleagues are involved when we're doing stuff on the agenda, because constituents may be calling them and say, hey, this is something that I want y'all to put on the agenda. I don't mind doing that because I want to be collaborative with those. In years past, that has not been the case. Now, with me being the Mayor Pro Tem for the last 2 years, I've been involved in those agenda setting meetings because that's part of the role that the Mayor Pro Tem takes. So it's going to be important to me, whoever my colleague, and let me say that all of my colleagues, after 2 years of me being on commission, all my colleagues came to me and said, hey, would you be Mayor Pro Tem? So I think it says a lot about my leadership, about me being collaborative and being able to work with, we don't always agree, which is fine. That's how democracy works. We don't always agree. But I think it's important that as a mayor that you have a collaboration with your other 10 commissioners to make sure we get things done. So I'm going to do that. That's why 7 and myself 8 other commissioners have endorsed me in this race because they understand what I can bring to the table and they know I can move things forward. And that's what I want to do.
I'm glad that you brought up your time as a mayor pro tem because can you explain that to people who may not know government? What is that? How did you come into that role?
Okay. So the mayor pro tem is part of our charter. And what the mayor pro tem, really the basis for that, when the mayor is not present, he run the meeting. But my biggest thing is the budget. So the mayor does his budget. And we're doing the budget right now. He does the budget, and the budget comes to us. I get with all my colleagues, and then we go through what the mayor has presented, and then we look at say, well, mayor might have put this in, we're gonna take this out. So I'm sort of quarterback that particular budget with my colleagues, making sure that we're all on the same page, making sure that whatever thing that we put in there, we want those to be in there. Anything that we took out, that the mayor put in, that he awesome stuff that he might not have funded, that we say, okay, we want to fund this. So the mayor does his budget first. It comes to me as the mayor pro tem. I get with my colleagues. We have these budget hearings with our residents of this community. We go through this process, and then we vote on the budget. But mainly, I sit in when the mayor's not there. So the 2 years that I've been there, he missed about 3 meetings. I ran those meetings. So again, get me prepared to be the next mayor and making sure that I know how things get done and make sure we have a smooth operation. What's funny, every time I run our meetings, we're out in an hour and a half because I'm about business. Because sometimes with my colleague, they get to talking, and I try to be respectful, but I cut them off. I say, okay, we didn't beat this horse enough. Hey, everybody said their piece. Let's move on. So those type of things, learning how to run businesses and learn how to run this government, how to connect those dots, and how important those things are, and make sure that we're doing the people's business. And again, you all don't trust us, and we got to build that trust. So actually from day one, I'm gonna start saying how we gonna build trust with our residents that's born and raised, people that wasn't born and raised. You got to get that trust factor back. But the only way you do that though, you're accountable, you're transparent, and you're above board about that. You're not doing deals in the back room. And I'm not gonna do deals. Never have. My integrity and my ethics is so important to me. Truly, that's all I got. And if people think that I can't do that or want to, then that's shame on me. So I'm not gonna be cutting deals with nobody. I just don't do that. I don't operate like that. And besides, I understand with me, if I did try to cut deals, I would get treated the same way. I mean, I understand that. I'm a black man being the mayor. And if I do things that's unethical, immoral, it's gonna come back on me. And I'm not going down that road. I'm not gonna do that.
So that brings us to our wrap of the conversation. I think this is the heaviest subject because when
Mhm.
I listen to people in the streets just about how the campaign and how they're feeling, and for me personally, your relationship with policing makes us nervous because I hear you about, being the first Black mayor and your commitment to civil rights. But the data shows historically police surveillance and over policing impacts Black and brown communities the most. And when I'm listening to you just in this conversation, like I want you to be my guy. Like you sound confident, you sound like a man that can get in the room and get the jobs done. But you played a major role in the Real Time Crime Center being funded as the Mayor Pro Tem. And there are a lot of concerns from the residents about the Real Time Crime Center. Have you heard those concerns? What has been your feedback since that has been
Okay.
implemented?
I have a couple. I think there's some misnomers, and let me say this: when you chaired the peace card, you did a great job. I appreciate you doing the peace card. You may or may not know there was some commissioners that wanted to, even after we had voted on to do it, they wanted to pull the rug from under you guys.
Oh, yeah, I do remember. I think
Yeah,
I was present in the room when
yeah,
that meeting
yeah. And I
was
wasn't gonna let that happen.
Yeah.
For one thing. So, but getting back, and let me say this, and I want y'all to know, I want the community to know, um, as a Black man, having raised a Black son, got two Black daughters, believe me, I understand about, how our fear of the police is not only our community, but other community, of what could happen. Because there's bad apples all the way around. I ain't gonna sugarcoat that, anything that you do. But my thing is this, and this is what I said to our chief of police and to the sheriff. One thing, and I go back to the Real Crime Center in a few minutes. One thing that we're gonna do is, first of all, those officers, and I go and knock on the door on the east side where they sitting on the block watching. Those officers gonna get out of those cars and really get to know those communities. I told Chief that, I said, if I'm the mayor, my expectation of this police department is those men and women to be out in those communities. First of all, to get to know those communities, have a relationship with those communities, and build trust. That's number one. Secondly, I think it's important that we don't over police our department because, again, I mean our neighborhood. But I do want them to know that if they call on the officers, they're there to protect, number one, and to serve. And to me, that's so important. So I gotta be able to, first of all, trust the chief to do the right thing and hire people, men and women, that look like us, that can serve those communities. So for me, that's gonna be important that we do that. We got 3 precincts in our community. We got one on the east side, on the block, got one on Baxter, one at the mall. In my opinion, those precincts people should be in those precincts because if there's an emergency, somebody can run there and get help. But right now, those precincts, they go there and park, change clothes or whatever. I'm gonna change that narrative. I need somebody to be there. If a resident come off the block, come from Netherby, from whatever, and they need help, we need to be able to respond and get that help. Now, with the real-time crime center, and I really want people to understand, for me, I think it's, first of all, I want to protect our community, number one. Now, what people don't know, Cassie, we only have access to 300 cameras. The rest of those cameras are tied in to businesses, to communities, and to UGA. So I want people think we got, think we got 1,800 cameras looking at downtown. We only have 300. Another thing that we do, every 30 days, you're a tech person, we're cleaning the cloud. So we don't keep stuff. Cause I asked Chief the question, I said, tell me, I said, cause I'm getting questions about these flock cameras, how that information could be shared. He said, Commissioner, we scrub every 30 days. Anything that comes before, and what he says, what they do, anything that comes before them, if there's any type of crime, they investigate the crime. You still got to have boots on the ground to investigate crime. We don't depend all on technology. We investigate the crime. Once that crime is solved, once they go into the court process, that stuff is scrubbed. They don't keep that stuff on our cloud. Now, could somebody hack the system? Heck yeah. I mean, you're an IT person. But let me tell you what the Real Crime Center has done. When Baby Dre got killed, the 3-year-old, if it wasn't for the Real Time Crime Center, we wouldn't have found out who killed that young child. We had a shooting downtown. These people from outside. I mean, I watched that video. That guy executed those guys. Without the Real-Time Crime Center, we probably would have solved the crime, but within 48 hours, those folks got arrested. Had a young lady that got raped again. So when I talked with those parents, and what we did with, and I won't call the young lady's name who lost a child, but when we talked to her, and I'm gonna tell you what we did, because of what she was. My church, we raised money to help her move, to get out of her situation. She's doing really well. But when I see things like that are helping our community to help solve problems, and we losing young folks, sometimes left and right, then those things come into play. But I'm always gonna make sure, as your mayor, that first of all, that our office don't abuse their power, that they have a relationship with that community, and make sure that they are there, first of all, to protect and to serve. And serve that's the biggest thing. You're not there to to intimidate, do any of those things. You're there to serve and protect. And that's what I would demand from our police department. Same thing with the sheriff. I talk to him all the time, about housing, jail public, and we have some deaths out there. What's going on? Why are people dying from fentanyl and stuff like that? And we got to figure out why is that happening. How do you people sneak drugs in, and again, you have to take a deep dive. I mean, GBI, and we still have not got a report back, but the GBI is investigating that, and why is all that happening? So those type, and we should, at times in our community, we should be leery sometime about our police department. And let me tell you one quick story though. Rolling Ridge is one of my areas that is in my district. An officer, and he was, started doing some community policing. He was there, riding through the community, seeing some young people playing basketball. The cold was pretty much, it was about to come down. He took it upon himself with his own money, when and bought a basketball goal for those kids, installed it for those kids, and started playing basketball with them. That's what sort of community police should be and what it should look like. So those type of things, that would be my expectation. Is there a perfect perfect way to do this, to do policing? No, but I would expect that all our residents be treated with respect and with fairness. And again, every organization got some bad apples. We don't want those bad apples working in our department. We may have to, and I think the chief, matter of fact, maybe I shouldn't say it, but he just got rid of some people recently. So those type of things that we have to look for. And for me, as an elected official, with the county, and the county manager, the chief does report to the county manager, but I gotta believe that my influence would be, hey, we're gonna do things right, the right way, and represent our community, not over police. Our community will be there to protect and serve, and I can't stress that enough, especially the service part. That's important to me.
So with the measured success, have there been any conversations about expanding the surveillance?
They have not that I'm
Okay.
aware of. We have not talked about that. I think our biggest and again, communities can tie in, and I know one of my communities that's in my district, they tied in to the police department. Anybody that comes into that neighborhood, that license plates get read. Now, again, there's nothing they don't police officers, they don't report that, but if a crime happened over there, a particular car may get identified. When that car came through, we got a license plate, bam. So, but each community, and again, they do this on their own. We don't ask them to do it. That's why I'm saying when you talk about 1,800 cameras, only 300 of those belong to Athens-Clarke County Police Department. So I need people to understand that and know the rest of them are connected to businesses and to communities. And everybody though got a Ring camera. So I get it by the idea that Big Brother's watching, but all of us got security system in our houses. We got Ring camera. What's funny, all the houses and stuff I knocked on, every time I saw was a Ring camera, you know, ringing the doorbell. So, people want to be protected, but at the same time, we got to do it in a way that we're not infringing on people's rights. And as the mayor, I'm not having it.
And I like that you brought up Peace Cobb for anybody listening. Peace Cobb is the Public Safety Civilian Oversight Board. At one point, I was the chair of this board, and Dexter Fisher is stating facts. There was a moment where there was at least one commissioner who wanted to move to disband Peace Cobb, and I think that was more so of a personal thing rather than like the work of the actual board. But you talked about wanting the community to hold law enforcement accountable. But my question is, from someone who has served on the board, it sounds good in theory,
Mhm.
but with the structure of the board, can you honestly say that it is equipped to hold the police or law enforcement accountable?
Well, I think one thing, and since you've been gone, we'll change it because when you was there, the auditor department was running it. Now we're moving it over um, to the county manager, and the reason being, and Gavin brought up a good point. When he goes in and do an audit in that particular department, and he's overseeing Peace Corps, it's hard for him to do the audit and do that and do Peace Corps at the same time. So the county manager now will oversee that. And to me, I think what's good about that, if there's things that's going wrong that's coming from Peace Corps, the county manager will have direct access to the chief. Say, hey, these complaints are coming out, what we're getting from our residents. Peace Corps saying, hey, y'all didn't do this, y'all do it. And he can hold the chief accountable. Why y'all did not do that? And I think, now let me say this, I think Peace Corps, it needs to grow. And to me, we still a young baby. I think there's a lot of things that we need to do to tighten that up, to make sure that the community feel like they can go there and really get some type of justice. So I think as we continue to grow Peace Corps and as Peace as Peace Corps continue to expand, I think it's going to get better. I'm glad that we got it. I think we should have a citizen oversight, and I really want to make sure that our residents can know if you was done wrong, whether or not with our police, with the jail, with probation, with anybody, please make the complaint. Let's let us investigate that complaint and let us get to the root of the cause of those things. If you was done wrong, we want to correct those wrong. Because one thing that y'all don't see sometimes is when residents have sued us and we was in the wrong, we had to pay. So I think it's important that our residents know that here's a process. We want to make sure that we keep improving on that process so people will feel confident. And what Peace Corps is trying to do also, and I appreciate them trying to do, is also get the word out, continue to communicate with our community and things. And the people on there, that's why it's important to me when we make those decisions about who we put on those committees, that they really are committed to make sure that we get this right and that people in our community is not being abused, not being done wrong, not being falsely arrested. Those type of things that we need to be doing to make sure that those things doesn't happen.
When I was still on the board, budget hadn't been allocated. Has a budget been allocated for the board at this time?
It has not. And I'm glad you brought that up. And I have to, and I always take responsibility if I didn't look at that. But I'm gonna have to ask Gavin Is the budget gonna stay the same, or has anything been allocated for that? So I need to ask the question because I'm not sure, and that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah, especially when we're talking about communicating to the community. A lot of people don't even know that the board exists. When I look into other cities that have police oversight boards, something that I notice is the ones that are most effective, the board has more ability to just the information. They have more information. So with Atlanta specifically, they have independent lawyers that are a part of the board. And right now, my critique of the board is that it's made up of everyday people, which is great, but the ex officio, the police that actually come in with the information that are giving the information to the board, they work for the government.
Mhm.
So you can kind of look at it like this is the government reviewing itself, and
So
the trust is that's the disconnect right there. Like, how can we trust this board to review when it's being reviewed by the same people that could possibly, be a part of the issue? So
right.
that's just my critique. That's where my
Yeah,
head's at with the board.
and that's fair because and what Atlanta has done, because they about 20 plus years in. So you're right. They got a whole. I mean, they truly are independent. They really independent. They don't report. I think that board is their reporter. I'm not sure. And we had somebody come in when you was the chair. We had somebody come in and talk with us, but they're totally independent. You're right. They got attorneys present, and we do too, but it's not the same. So I get that. That's why I say I think as we continue to grow out on Peace Corps, and as we continue to mature as an oversight committee, those are some of the things that eventually could possibly happen where they truly are an independent board that looks at things that happen in our community when it comes to our law enforcement. So I just think those things can happen, and we just got to stay on tune. And I can tell you, and the people that there though, they are really aggressive and really trying to make sure that they try to be as independent that they can and try to make good decisions. I can't say that about the group. They really do. And a lot of times, if there's a complaint that went against the police department or with the sheriff department, they do it, and we expect to see those corrections when they come out. So yeah.
So thank you so much, Dexter, for this conversation. To close out, let us know, what is Dexter Fisher, the mayor, going to do differently than Dexter Fisher, the commissioner?
And well, first of all, like I said, I can set the stage early as the mayor. Um, I can lead those 10 people, and I'm gonna make sure, like I said, we're gonna have boots on the ground. I'm gonna be out in this community. I always was respectful of other commissioners' district. So I stayed in my lane. I stayed in District 5. As a mayor, I can be all over. I can set the agenda. I can change the culture of how our government used to work and what our government should work and be working for the people. I'm gonna be very aggressive, and probably gonna get some pushback. But as your mayor, you all gonna know that I'm out there fighting, and I'm fighting for everyone in this community. Somebody asked me back in December, well, what you gonna do for black people? And I said to them, I said, well, the question I'm gonna ask is, what do black people want? You tell me. I can't just because I'm an African American man. I don't have an answer. I don't answer for all our community. I don't.
That's
But
true.
at the same
Yeah.
time, I want to know what they want from us as a government to help them to better themselves. I want to understand for our community that's not engaged and they feel disengaged. I want to make sure that we engage those folks. For me as your mayor, I'm gonna make sure that people got voices that hadn't had voices in the past. And again, I'm gonna be out there. I want people to understand when I show up, I'm showing up for you. Don't be shamed. Don't feel like that you can't approach me because one of the tags I get is I'm not approachable. Well, get to know me. Get to know who Dexter is. Because hey, I understand. I've been there. You know, I know what it's like to struggle. I know how to watch a single mom struggle to take care of two boys. So I understand that. So I wasn't born no silver spoon in my mouth. Some people think I was, but that didn't happen. It just didn't happen. But I'm not gonna shy away from my success and the things that I've accomplished in my life, and I hope the people that I helped along the way. And my wife taught 30 years in the school system. All my children were educated here. I mean, you and Carlos grew up together, and came out of Clark Central. So again, this is my home, Cassie. don't want to be anywhere else. I had so many opportunities to lead. This is where I want to be. This is where I'm supposed to be. And I want the people of Athens to be proud of me as their mayor. And I want us to make history. We need to make it. It's time. It's been time. We have had opportunities, but it's time for a change. It's time for somebody like me to take this mantle and run with it and bring our community along. I don't want to leave anybody behind. But I say this though, but I'm going to need all these partners though. Come in one band, 10 commissioners. But we can't do it. I'm going to, and I challenge, and Cassie, I would challenge your listeners. I want them to know if I'm not doing right by y'all, you call up and say, hey, you said you was going to do this. You hadn't done this. Call me out. I'm man enough to, I take my punishment. I understand how this thing works. And I understand what it's going to take, though, to get us there. And if you all, and again, I've never talked about any of my opponents, but you just need to look at the folks he surrounded himself with and what they look like. And look at the people I surrounded myself with. I've done the work where I hired women and people of color to lead organizations, to lead their departments. I've done that. I don't know with UGA, but with the Clarke County School District. Even in my campaign team, all women on my campaign team, black and white. So, I have a diverse group, people helping me. And I get criticized. I'm surprised you didn't bring it up, about the money that I raised and stuff like that. But, that's 38 years, though, of me building relationships. And I had just as many people give me $100 or less that hasn't been somebody give me $1,000. So for me, I never will sell out. And I don't owe nobody nothing. Everybody, if you gave me $5, you got the same type of access to me as somebody gave me $1,000. And that's the type of man that I am. Like I told you, my integrity means everything to me. My ethics mean everything to me, and I'm not gonna compromise myself for nobody. I ain't going to jail for you. That ain't gonna happen. And I've been in places. I've controlled millions and millions of dollars. I've always been up above board. When I was working, people say, "Well, do you want a credit card?" I say, "Nope, I don't need no credit card. If I go somewhere, I pay for it. Y'all reimburse me." I just try not to put myself in situations where if I thought I had to compromise myself, I'm not gonna do that. That's just not how I'm not built like that. I'm just not. So.
Well, again, it was an honor to talk to you. If you're listening at home, know that this is the voice of a man that's determined. He has the majority of the commission behind him endorsing his campaign. I'm wishing you the best on the campaign trail.
Thank you.
By the time you all hear this, early voting will have started. The big day is on June 16th. We're going to see. Dexter Fisher, you might be our next mayor. But
Can I
Athens.
plug something?
Sure. Yeah.
So this Wednesday, we're doing a Souls to the Polls. We're doing a cookout at Ebenezer Baptist Church from 5 to 7, because on Wednesday, the polls stay open to 7. So if people want to ride, we would take you to the polls to vote, but we're going to be doing hamburgers and hot dogs just for the community to come out. If you need a ride to the poll, we give you a ride. So Souls to the Polls this Wednesday.
You hear, there's no excuse. Athens, share your thoughts in the comments and let's talk politics. Thank you, Dexter.